and I always love when that happens. But yeah, having that on the album, like, it was really important for me to talk about that because I feel like it's kind of receded from, public view in Canada, and it's like people are able to forget so quickly. But I don't want to forget that. I feel like I'm still in disbelief that our current prime minister can't remember how many times he's worn blackface.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. You're listening to The Cool Table, and we're in the cut with Cadence Weapon.
What's up?
Man, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. For anyone who's listening or watching in the cut for the first time, we challenge our guests to finish a tub of ice cream before the end of the interview. Cadence Weapon is one of the alumni in the show, so he's taken on this challenge before. Unsuccessful the first time, so we're seeing if we can go 1 for 2. And which kind of flavor did you choose this time?
Okay, so here's the thing. I got the strawberry cheesecake because it was the most interesting sounding flavor. But here's the thing. I recently learned that I actually I'm lactose intolerant.
Oh, wow.
Yes, that might be why I wasn't able to finish it last time. But I got the lactate on deck. I am gonna have some of the ice cream.
Okay. Next time we got to get you a vegan option so we could really see it go down, because I feel like I have more faith in people finishing it now than I did when I first started this show. I really thought that nobody able to do it, but I feel like there is a possibility that someone could actually get it done.
Yeah, no, totally. I saw there were some vegan options, but I don't know. The strawberry cheesecake, it sounded so dope. I wanted to try it.
Definitely. Also, we got to talk about the new project, Parallel World. Now, I heard you say this project is like an art party, and I thought that was literally the perfect way to describe it. And I haven't seen this mentioned as much, which I feel like weird, but I feel like you've definitely like leveled up your bars like another level at least. Like kind of every song I hear, I'm like, okay, he's spitting. And I feel like that's something that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about. Is that something kind of you noticed within yourself when you were making this project, or are you hearing the songs back?
Well, I always try to raise the level every time, and I think lyrically I've really focused on that over the last couple records, like on the self-titled one, which we talked about last time. I really emphasized that, like lyrically I wanted to be like, yo, I'm like the one, whereas on this record it's just a continuation of that, where it's like I just kept, especially being in the pandemic and being just locked down, and really I haven't been able to focus on a record like this since my first album, since I was like a teenager, like at my mom's house, right? So I've been just like vibing out, really thinking about, thought about the concepts and the lyrics for this record in a way that I wouldn't have been able to in any other like circumstance, like it's like I definitely, the pandemic obviously is like a horrible time for everybody, but I really appreciate the level of focus it gave me.
No, I can see that all over this one. And there's some songs that, I feel like you are kind of the perfect person to make that song, if that makes any sense. Just in terms of like level of rapping, kind of what you mean to Canada and the Canadian kind of music scene in general. And then just the content as well. There's that bar that I'm sure you've heard a lot about where you said a president wear blackface but can't, see black faces or face black faces or face black lives. And like that bar, obviously crazy bar first and foremost, but that's when I think of when I'm like, this wouldn't sound the same coming from anybody else. So let's talk about putting that bar in there and just that song in general.
Well, that's on the song Play No Games, and I am very proud of that song, and I feel like that line, I try and do things that I feel like only I could do. Like I really, anytime I lean into something and I'm like, oh, I feel like I am the only person who could do this justice, or I'm the only person who could do this in my way, I really go hard in that direction, because I'm like, okay, like I've tapped into something that feels like really individual, and I always love when that happens. But yeah, having that on the album, like it was really important for me to talk about that, because I feel like it's kind of receded from, public view in Canada, and it's like people are able to forget so quickly. But I don't want to forget that. I feel like I'm still in disbelief that our current prime minister can't remember how many times he's worn blackface.
That's
And not only that, but then people voted for him right after. There was just like, it was approval. It's like, yeah, we're with you.
it was wild. I had a conversation with my grandmother, who grew up in Jamaica. You can just imagine how that talk went. And I was like,
Yeah.
"Have you seen these pictures? Seen these videos?" And she was like still trying to like defend him. And I was like, "Grandma, do you understand what I mean by blackface? Like, do you know what I'm saying when I say that?" And you're right. It's like gone from the conversation now. People voted for him. So like you bringing that up, I thought was huge. But that should be like kind of one of the first lines in his obituary.
Yeah, no, for real. Like it's like, yo, he painted his tongue black.
Like
What
what?
first off, what is that? There's no one, no human does that. And that's some like attention to detail. He's like really into blackface. So I had to put that bar, and I feel like I was surprised I hadn't heard anybody else from Canada rap about that. I guess there's always that thing where people are afraid to seem Canadian or something, or be like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm talking about something that's too Canadian, and I want to like kind of blend in with like American rap, but like I never cared about that. I
and
just like
and and that,
on
like
my
you said
own.
before, you having that thing that only you can do, like this is one of those, because that bar hits in a way where you actually think about it again. If someone else had kind of said that bar, it might be taken as more of a joke or more kind of
Mhm.
comedy in their act, when it's like, no, that really happened, like he's really saying that.
I remember exactly when I came up with that too. I was walking down the street and I just got the beat from Koreatown Acid, and I was just like looping it over and over, and like the lyrics were just coming to me, and then it was just like, my prime minister wears blackface, but he don't really want to face blacks. And as soon as I came up with that, I was just like, I called my girlfriend right away, and I was like rapping over the phone to her. I was like, I was like, ooh, I got something. Whenever I get that feeling, I know it's gonna be a keeper.
Mhm.
Whenever I'm just like, woo, and I'm like, I'm if I make myself laugh, I'm like, okay, this is like relevant. Like I should keep this.
Oh, Hundo P on Skyline in that last verse. You're going in again, and
Mhm.
that's another verse I think we kind of needed. Like hearing your project, I was like, this is a void we definitely needed to be filled, especially because like these are a lot more kind of dance electronic type beats, but you're spitting harder than people who are going on trap or traditional hip hop, and that last verse on Skyline was something serious. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so that song and that verse was really inspired by, once it was out of the first wave of the pandemic and you could actually like go to stuff and things were opening up. I went for a walk just down Queen Street West, and I was amazed, like everything had been closed. Stuff was places that I used to go turned into weed stores. It was just like becoming this, like I didn't recognize Toronto. That was the thing that tripped me out. It's like, wow, I don't recognize the city I live in at all. And then it's like I got to Trinity Bellwoods, and I saw the encampments really for the first time, and I was really blown away because I know somebody who lives across the street from the park, and their house is incredibly nice. So just the idea of having that juxtaposition between people who don't have a home at all and people who have like some of the nicest homes in town. I was like, how can I speak to that in a song, and on top of that is just like seeing, I've never been more politically engaged in my entire life, just during this pandemic. And my girlfriend is she is a reporter for the Toronto Star, and so like I'm more in tune to the news than I've ever been, so it's like the more I learn, the more I absorb and then kind of synthesize and then bring it out in my own way, and I feel like that song is a really good example of that. Really, I've been following political things, and I feel like I have more of a responsibility to really speak to these issues because like I'm able to make these connections that maybe other people can't, or I'm able to do it in song form in a way that like no one else really is trying to do, and I just think it's important to do things that only I could do.
And I think it's embracing the now in a great way, because this is an album that 5 years, 10 years from now, when someone hears it, it will be able to kind of hear what time this album was made in, or hear when it came out in. And it's like that, I think, is kind of the most, I guess, present or relevant music to me, at least, especially over the past couple of years, because a lot of music has come out has not kind of been any different from any other music coming out. It's like we are living in a pandemic. Like it does not, like that used to be a joke before. That's no longer a joke. So for the music to mirror some of those feelings, some of those things, I think is absolutely imperative. And then you said this thing on an interview about the George Floyd protest being inspired by collective action that you saw, and that being kind of what inspired you to write some of the album as well. It's now been over a year since then, and that those things inspired me as well to do some work that I'd done. So talk about, I guess, just seeing all that on TV, what that was like, the conversations you were having, and then how that led into the studio.
Well, just seeing just the collective mass response to it, not just being the Black community, that really amazed me, because all the stuff that we're talking about, like I felt like, I've seen this movie before, like we've experienced this before, like I'm old enough to remember Rodney King, so it's like feeling like, nothing really is going to come of this. At first I was like still feeling kind of jaded about it, but then actually seeing like these corporations like feeling like they need to say something, and seeing, I like my white friends hitting me up and being like, hey, are you okay? And so I was like, well, that's never happened before, so it's like there's something about the moment that felt a bit different. And I also felt like you know all of my favorite albums, classic albums, they speak to the times that they're in, like whether it's like Gil Scott Heron records, or like Marvin Gaye, what's going on, or, even like Sly and the Family Stone, there's a riot going on. Like, these are artists who weren't afraid to talk about what's going on politically and talk about what's the social issues of the time were, so I know it feels a bit like out of fashion to do that now. Like I feel like a lot of like, whether it's like trap music or like whatever hip hop is going on, like people don't really want to step out and do something that's going to offend one or other side, and I felt like I need to have like a certain level of bravery and really come out here and talk about these issues, because I can speak to them in a way that not other people can, you know.
Now we really appreciate that, because like I said before, that's not something that you're seeing all the time. You had this quote that I thought was absolutely perfect, because you called it the summer of Black pain, and I had heard it being called the summer of white guilt, and I thought it was so interesting. It's like, why does those two things have to be what it has to be? Talk about, again, just calling it the summer of Black pain. Obviously, we know why that name fits, but talk about why you thought that was a fitting moniker.
Well, I feel like America is founded on Black pain, and it's central to the American experience, and it's also, um, it's prior, in our art, if there isn't that Black pain in it, it's less marketable, weirdly, to white people, so I mean, that's just the way it felt, just from my perspective. Was like, it was just like back to back, like one after another, the Ahmed Arbery, Breonna Taylor, like just all of them, where it was just like I was hearing about another one, and I was like, oh man, it was like and then seeing so much of it on the news, and seeing like the videos like played over and over, and it was just like, they're just like, it becomes this almost like this isn't like helpful, you know. So that's what it felt like. And I just think, in a weird way, you know, these are things that were not thought about or not openly talked about in the past, like these racial issues, especially in Canada. And I feel like the one positive with all this is it got everyone talking and really discussing, and using different language than we used to. That was the other thing, is that, you know, if I were to talk to somebody about, like, on my last record, I have songs about microaggressions, and, just like, to talk about that now, people know what it is, right? And they have the language, and, there's more books and more stuff from that perspective. So I feel like it was painful in the moment, but I feel like we're coming out of it in an interesting way. And especially like a year later, you're seeing a lot more thought about, you know, um, just racial justice in general. Whether not even just with Black people. I mean, right now, just hearing about the remains of the children, the indigenous children found at that residential school site in Kamloops, like and seeing like the outpouring and the response and the way that people are able to tie that directly into systemic oppression. I don't think people would really have the language to do that a couple years ago.
Oh,
So
for sure. And it feels like as a collective community, we all got a tiny bit smarter over the past year as well. And you mentioned it before, like what's happening, what kind of came to light out west. We're seeing a lot of people post about that. I don't know if that would have been the case, maybe 2 years ago. Same thing that was going on in Palestine. Seeing that a lot of people that was like a conversation I was having with many white people for a good couple of weeks, which probably wouldn't have been the case before. So I think in that sense, we're also more aware. And then I think identifying anti-Black racism. I remember I worked on a piece, and in my script, I had written just racism at a lot of places. And one of the people editing the piece said, change all these to anti-Black racism, because it's a very different thing. So even in that sense, I think we've gotten a lot smarter, kind of recognizing that part of it. Now, it's been a couple of years since your last project, and every time you bring a new project out, I always have that feeling like, yo, can we get like 3 projects a year? Like the people that are doing 3 projects a year, we'd rather you do that. Like it always feels like it's so long that we wait, but you're working on other things. You got a memoir coming out. People have asked for it. You're going to be talking about some of your experiences, some things you've done. What can you tell us, I guess, about the memoir you have coming out, and I guess what perspective you're showing us in that book?
Well, before I get to that, I will speak to how I don't drop that often. Like for me, it's like I kind of work at my own pace, and I think there's pluses and minuses to that. The thing is, like, I'm always making music, but it's like it takes me a long time to really, when it's album time, I know it's album time, and it's just like with this record, it came to me quite quickly, over a couple months, and I was just like, boom, this is an album for sure. But I think that's something that's my new point of emphasis is to, I want to kind of like get more moving with the times where I like, drop a single every month, all the time, and I hopefully that will make people happy.
You got no complaints from me. You got no complaints.
That's good. But yeah, the book, yeah, so it's called Bedroom Rapper, and I'm frantically trying to finish it like now, and I'm like 70% done. I'm really excited about it. I feel like just the fact over the pandemic, like I got a book deal, and there's this interest in hearing my story and my experiences, and I feel like it could be like a really important book for a lot of people in Canada, because I feel like a person like me is not usually platformed or signal boosted to be published by a mainstream publisher in our country. So, and especially talking about the stories that I'm talking about, growing up Black in the prairies, and being, a Black person in the Canadian music industry when rap was not really as popping, like I get to talk about like the pre-Drake era, which is like I was around for that, so I talk about that. I talk about Canadian music industry. I talk about, but also like just Canadian identity as well. Like it's a bunch of different essays that touch on different things. But I do talk a lot about my records. So it's like if you're like a fan of my music, it's like you're gonna learn stuff about like how did I even like become a rapper? Like how did I start in Edmonton, and like how did that even like happen? Because it is like I think kind of like a wild story. Just it's like very unlikely, but it is my life story. So I'm doing that. It's not like a strict memoir, like it's like essays and memoir, but I think people will like it.
Nah, I think so too. I think just like you said before, the range of stories that you have, of experiences, of perspectives, like like anyone who's kind of want to follow in your footsteps of doing a book as well, like you're setting the bar high. I feel like just from knowing you and kind of knowing how thick that you are, very very excited for it. One thing you talked about that I really really felt deep in my heart was talking about your cooking skills during the pandemic. Now, me myself, I definitely have got to chefing it up in the pandemic. And you talked about hitting your stride, getting the perfect chicken.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was getting there, and I got an air fryer, and it just set me back.
Oh, but I think isn't the air fryer just great though? People love it.
No, it's too easy. Like I stopped putting all the work in. It was just like a little season here, this here, throw it in the air fryer, and it kind of brought me down in terms of my level. But talk about kind of you just improving your cooking skills over the pandemic, because I feel like that's something that's been definitely slept on over the last couple of years.
For sure. And like I feel like that was another thing, just being home all the time, is like having time to really focus on cooking and try different things. That was a big thing, is like I've made so many different varieties of chicken now. Like it's second nature at this point. But for
Jeez.
me, I think the thing that's really important obviously is the seasoning, and also the temperature that you use, that and like the methodology. I'm really into infusing meat with a lot of flavor now,
Okay.
so I'm like really into anything where it's like, oh, you marinate it for over a day, or you like marinate it. Like I have a lot of recipes that like you're like sheet pan recipes where you cook the chicken with the vegetables, but you also put in like some lemon,
Mm-hmm.
and like it comes out and the chicken is just like full of lemony flavor, right? So that to me was what brought my chicken to another level.
Mm-hmm.
Is I've done that a few different times. Like I made this really interesting kind of like Middle Eastern chicken dish that I was like blown away by this because it uses quince. Do you know this fruit?
No, what is
Quince.
that?
Okay, so it's I had it maybe once or twice, but usually it goes good with chicken. There's something about the flavor of it, and it's just it's a stone fruit, and you put it in, and you like. So I would you cook it in there with the chicken and with some potatoes and some other stuff. It was insane, because it's just like a different kind of flavor. That's what I'm constantly searching for now, is just like different flavors, new flavors. The same way I'm looking for like new beats, new ideas, new vibes, is how
Mm-hmm.
my cooking world is. Like I'm if I can find like a vegetable that I'm like, what is that? Like I'm really into, you can get the cauliflower and it's like purple.
Whoa.
And and I'm like, what? Like I go to like Fortino's sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when I get like turned up.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah, yeah. Fortino's is
because
serious.
they have just like all these obscure fruits and stuff. Like they have like it sometimes it's hard to come by dragon fruit, but they've got it. I could go on about the food because I've become like a bit of a foodie. It's like I didn't even cook with shallots until recently.
Wow.
Like
Wow.
I wasn't really like up on shallots, but then I made this like shallot chicken dish that was like I think it was like an Alison Roman dish. I've been
Jeez.
cooking a lot of her stuff, like that's the thing. We got cookbooks in the house. We've been going crazy with cooking. So
Damn. I just asked you that to get my own little gems, because I used to enough to. The crazy thing is, me and my girlfriend don't live together, so when I'm at her place, it's kind of just choose what's there, make use of whatever you got. So I'm gonna add some of these vegetables and fruits that you're naming to her grocery list and be like, yo, listen, you gotta add these. We're gonna start experimenting, because like, and the chicken as well, and then the seafood. Shrimp pasta became one of my like top dishes. Even a day later, still fire. So I
it's
know exactly
amazing.
what you mean.
Yeah, no, I got put up on like a lot of the Samin Nasrat dishes. They're amazing. She's Persian, and she comes with the heat every time. She does that the Netflix show, the Salt Fat.
Oh yeah.
That's her, and so like we've been listening to her podcast, home cooking. Like, listen, man, we've been going in over the pandemic. It's been crazy.
You're all in right now, like.
Yes. Yeah, you hit a nerve. Like I really want to this is like I'm almost more fired up about cooking than like
Nah, listen, I feel you. Like, after the pandemic is done, like, I'm changed forever. This is like, I'm with you. Like, this is gonna be chefing up every day. Like, I know I'm with you 1,000,000,000%. We
I
got
really enjoy cooking for my girlfriend too. That's
mhm,
the other thing, is like
same.
I
I
get a
feel
lot
no,
of joy out of it.
no, I'm no that's me too. That's the thing. That's the me too. Like, I got no problem cooking the whole meal, doing everything. Like, you could just sit there and watch me cook. Like, that's fire to me. That is fire
Mhm.
to me.
No,
And
it's dope.
the best experience I think is when you haven't finished cooking, but you just see either the chicken or whatever you have like starting to take form, whether it's a smell or whatever, and you're like, "Ooh, this smells like fire." You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes, no, I love that. No, because I will always tell her, I'll be like, I have a feeling this is gonna be pretty good.
I did the same thing the other day. I like nothing was even like halfway done yet, but I could just feel it. I said, "Yo, you're mad lucky. Like this is about to be flames. You are a
Yeah.
super lucky girl." She's like, "Yeah, I know. I'm like, "Yeah, this is about to be amazing." These are the last few questions that we ask everyone on the show, and we're gonna start with the top five. Now they say the top five people in your life help make you who you are. So, who are the top five people in your life that help you be you?
Okay, wow, that's a great question. So, first person that comes to mind is my uncle Brett Miles. He's a jazz musician, and he was the first person who really took an interest in my rapping. And he had a funk band back in the day, and he would have me come rap with him. And he's a free spirited guy. He lived in New York. He like played for all these, like, he was a session musician for Mick Jagger, and like he performed with James Brown. Like, he's a heavy musician, and I learned a lot about just a love of music and like being who you want to be and being different from him. So like, shout out to my uncle. um Another person I would say would be my dad, obviously, because he was a DJ. He had rap music going on all throughout the house, like, and I feel like I take after him in a lot of ways. He was like a trailblazer in Edmonton, and I feel like I do the same thing now. Um, I definitely want to give a shout out to my mom, because I think she has that uh, such a positive spirit to her, and sense of optimism, and she's like kind of like a hippie, and I feel like I have that side to me a lot. And she was always very encouraging of my music, which I think you need as an artist to even get to the next level. So shout out to my mom. And I'm gonna say my partner, Sarah. I feel like this record definitely wouldn't exist without her, and I feel like the themes on it, just getting further more socially conscious. I think it has a lot to do with her, because she's a labor reporter, and I hear so much about all these stories that you don't really hear every day, that and it's really opened my eyes to you know how the institutions work against people. And I think that has been like a major factor on all the records on the album. And just also just in my everyday life, just being, you know trying to do the right thing and being a good person, and just having a strong moral compass. That's been a big thing that I've learned from Sarah. So shout
Yeah,
out to her.
we love to hear it.
And oh yeah, fifth person in my life. I'm actually gonna go a little bit left field. I'm gonna say my English teacher from grade 7, Mr. Leibel, because that was the moment when I really realized that I really liked the written word a lot, and that I had a kind of a skill for it. He was the first person, I got into the honors English in junior high, and it was like the first person who really kind of cultivated my like interest in writing. And I actually recently got to meet up with him like a year, like right before the pandemic. I was in Edmonton for the holidays, and we had lunch, and we like linked up, and just we talked shop and stuff, and it was really cool because it feels like we were the same. Like, it was
Yeah.
like it was dope.
That's cool. That's cool. Shout out to him.
Yeah.
Damn, that's a great five right there. Yeah, I love doing the top five because you get to kind of hear, who those important people are, and hearing, someone who has a kind of a great strong five, is always comforting because, for those who don't have that strong five around them, it can be very, very tricky. So, yeah, happy to
Well,
hear about that.
some people will probably be like, dial on, dial on, dial on, dial on, dial on.
Listen, if someone has that in their bag, I'll take that answer. I'll take that. Dylon, 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 Dylon. This next one, I think, I'm very, very curious to what your answer is going to be for this one. We see when people get $100 million, big money, they buy these exotic animals. Mike Tyson with his tiger, Justin Bieber with his monkey, Michael Jackson with his monkey. So when you get to that $100 million level, what animal are you going to spend it on?
Well, can I do plural?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, because the way I think of it is I would get one of those giant wraparound aquariums that you have in your house, and I'd have a lot of exotic fish because I've always had an affinity for fish. I'm a Pisces, and I think it'd be really cool to have just like all different sizes that are able to coexist, that are like really just some wild fish, like I find it very peaceful, like I think I saw like one of those shows that's like, oh, the most amazing houses in the world or whatever. And there's this one dude who had like the craziest aquarium in his crib. And I was just like, that seems really dope.
Yeah, the aquarium is a vibe. I'm just trying to picture the wrapper on my head. And I'm like, that looks crazy.
Yeah, no, it's totally, I'd be like, this is my chamber of reflection.
Like, yeah, for real. Like, yeah. And peaceful is a good word to use too. Like, I think of myself stretching in there, meditating in there. It's like you're hanging out. Yeah, that would be a vibe. I like that one. Yeah, definitely a big aquarium for sure. That and that's a baller move too. Like, it's like it's still a money flex without being totally ridiculous. You're like, there's no way you can afford this, but it doesn't look crazy. So yeah, the aquarium's a good one. We do a segment on the show called Wednesday Wisdom, hosted by our boy Brandon Gibbs, and it's a new motivational quote every single week, something that keeps you going, that you tell the people when they're feeling low. Is there something that either a saying or just a couple words that you remember that keeps you going?
Oh, that's a good question. Because I feel like I come with those all the time. Yeah, like I'm full of inspirational quotes, but let me think. What do I tell people? I mean, like whenever people ask me what advice I would give to young artists, I usually say, the most important thing is just to, be original. That was my guiding principle. Like this is kind of like a saying that I always have, is that basically, you could have two artists. One of them is really good at doing an exact copy of something and is able to do the genre classically well, and the other person is doing something that I've never heard before, but maybe it's somewhat imperfect. I'm always going to go for the second person. I'm always going to be attracted to the innovation, and I feel like that's always more important to me.
Nah, I agree with that. That one is useful for sure. That you got to put that one on a t-shirt or something. That one's useful. I feel like a lot of young artists could definitely use that advice. So yeah, that's 100% useful. I like that one a lot. I want to thank you for joining us on the show. Can we see how much ice cream that you have left?
Oh yeah. So yeah, I'm already. This is how much I have left.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, okay. Yeah, I'm enjoying it though.
No, it's good. It's good. The strawberry cheesecake, I had a little bit myself the other day. Actually, you choosing the flavor reminded me. Oh, I should probably try some of this. So big shout out to you for pushing me to try strawberry cheesecake. Actually a really great flavor. Big shout out to Eva's Chimneys for supplying the ice cream. They've always been holding on the show, so big shout out to them.
It's amazing. Actually, it's really good.
No, ice cream is crazy fire. For anyone who's listening to the show, watching this on YouTube for the first time, make sure you go ahead and subscribe. The Cool Table live on YouTube, In the Cut podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can listen to the Cool Table live on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. on CJRU 1280 a.m. And of course, until next time, know yourself, know your worth.